Well, Apple introduced the iPad in 2010, and when they were first released, many wondered what they would do with it, and would it even take off? Well, over a decade later, these devices have become a part of the mainstream, and many people use them for everything from web browsing to smart home control and many more things. So my guest today is very adept at making an iPad work for him and is on today's show to show the versatile use of this device. We also address the question, which I think many of my listeners may wonder, is whether an iPad can replace a computer as a primary device. So stay tuned. Well, this is Tech Tips for Seniors, a show with tips for seniors, or anyone really, on how to better use technology such as smartphones and computers in your daily lives. And I'm your host, Bruce Ciotta. My guest today is Andy Kirtland. Welcome, Andy.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, Andy and I go a ways back, and I've always admired, Andy, your use of the iPad in so many ways. So I wanted to bring you on the show just to talk about those. And I also want to address the question I think that the audience would have to ask, which is whether an iPad can be used to replace a computer, at least from your and my perspective. So before we get into that, can you introduce yourself and also share how you came to be passionate about the topic of using an iPad?
Yeah. Like you said, my name's Andy. I've been using an iPad for a long time now. I don't even know how long. Um, but I guess I'll get started. I guess I have a wife and two kids, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. We live in New Jersey. And yeah, I've been using an iPad for a really long time. I started with a mini, which is kind of, you've got your phone, which is about this big, and that was this big, and now I'm up to something about this big. And if I'm honest, I'd really like a bigger one, but that's for another day. But yeah, I've been using them for a long time. It kind of started out as just kind of this funny thing that I wanted to try, and now I use it every day for all sorts of things.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention Andy's my son-in-law, and when you mentioned your kids, these are my grandkids. So I'm happy to say I know all of your family that you mentioned there. So okay, so let's go back to iPad. So what would you say an iPad is for somebody who doesn't even know what we're talking about? And I have listeners like that. Why would somebody even want to own one? What is it?
So an iPad is it's a big iPhone. It's bigger screen. Um, Basically, the way that Apple advertises it, it's a piece of glass that's basically a computer. Basically, now kind of leading towards your question of is it a computer? Um, but it runs just like an iPhone. Anything you can do on an iPhone, you can pretty much do on an iPad. Some things are better for one and better for others. It just depends on, sometimes you want a bigger screen because you're trying to watch a movie. Sometimes you want a smaller screen because you want it to fit in your pocket. So they lead to different things depending on what you're looking for.
Okay, so the iPad got its birth as being a bigger phone. Now phones have gotten kind of big lately. I my
Yes, they have.
my phone is hardly fits in my pocket anymore, but
Yeah.
it does, and I do use it for watching movies and things like that now. And sometimes I travel with just the phone. But I would say I was looking at something last night on the phone, and I just couldn't make it big enough. Like I just couldn't expand. Every time I tried to expand it, it I lost the page and it just disappeared on me. This was something that was a presentation that I was trying to look at. And I said, gee, I wish this phone was a little bigger. I could just read the letters on it. So, but yeah, that's a pretty good explanation, I think, of what you describe. And when you were holding up your hands for how big your started with your iPhone was, some of the people who watch and listen to this show don't actually see the video, but it started out a little bit bigger than a smartphone is today, and now it got to the point where you were describing something about as big as a computer screen almost, right? I think the one you have is pretty close to that size, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the uses that you get because you get a lot out of your iPad. You make that thing work for you. It's not something that you just pull out occasionally. So, what are some of the things you do on a day-to-day basis, let's say to take advantage of the iPhone and its bigger size? I should say the
Yeah.
iPad as opposed to the iPhone.
Yep. So pretty much every morning, I listen to a podcast that reads through the Bible. I listen to it from there. It's just convenient. I don't necessarily need the larger size, but it's convenient because it's sitting there. Um, and I'll open that up, I'll listen to it, and then I can follow along. Or when I'm done with that, I will quite often open up the news app and just see what's going on in the world. I love teching up on technology and what's going on with that, new things that are coming out, just what's going on in the world. Um, that's kind of my normal morning, but from day to day, I'll pick it up for all sorts of things. If I'm going to a meeting or to church, my iPad, I have the pencil that goes with it, so I can write on the screen. So I will handwrite notes on the screen. There are a bunch of apps that will do that. I use OneNote because it syncs to my computer. So if I ever want to, I can open those notes on the computer. But for the most part, I use it on my iPad. Um, so, um, and I'll do short emails. I don't have a keyboard for my iPad. So it's not the most convenient for typing if you don't have a keyboard. So I will do short emails, text messages. If I'm working on some kind of a document that just needs a quick edit, I might use my iPad, but not having a keyboard kind of limits my personal use of it.
Wow. So it sounds to me like you kind of use it all day long. Is that a fair
Yeah. Yeah,
assessment?
I'll come, I use it in the morning, and then I'll come back to it sporadically throughout the day when I need it. I would say for most of my personal stuff, it is my go-to device.
Hmm.
For work, I have to have a computer, unfortunately. I can't make that my only machine. But for my personal stuff, that's my regular go-to.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of things I wanted to touch on. It sounded like when you were listening to one of these podcasts that you use your iPad for, you talked a little, I think, about the fact that you could be having that playing in the background, or at least maybe I didn't
Yes.
quite follow you, but
Yep.
what that says to me is that an iPad has the ability to be kind of multitasking. Looks like a computer
Yeah.
has two windows open. Is that the correct
Yep.
way to?
Yep. Um, I can put that on, and then I can start the podcast, and then I can go check my email. I can go do whatever I want. It will keep playing in the background. I've used it for music or a movie. It's easy to move around if I'm, working, listening to something, and it's time to make breakfast or dinner or whatever. I can bring it with me and keep listening, and it's the right size and easy to move around.
Okay, good, good, good. And then you also mentioned that you wish you could use it in work, but you really can't. So you use a computer
Yeah.
instead at work. But there are some things that you use the iPad for as alongside your work things, as I recall you saying.
Yeah.
What are some of those
Yep.
things?
Yeah, so I am a land surveyor here in New Jersey. And so I use all sorts of technology and other kinds of tablets, but my iPad on a pretty regular basis, I use it as a second monitor. So I have my iPad pretty much always sitting on my desk in front of me. It's sitting in front of me now. Um, and I can turn it into a second monitor for my computer. I'll have what I'm working on in front of me, and then off to the side on the iPad, I can have messages, whether it's my boss, my wife. I can have a video. I can have pictures up of the job that I was at. So I use it for that pretty regularly, and I also fly a drone somewhat regularly for work. And while I could use my phone to do that, I like the larger screen size to be able to get a better view of what it is that I'm looking at, because the drone will show me a picture from the sky, and it's a lot easier to see on the larger screen.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most creative uses for an iPad that I could think of all the things you talk about. And one of the things that pushes us into a level of technology that I'm not even that aware of or familiar with, but the software for the drone, or at least the visuals for the drone, is
Yeah,
displayed on your iPad, and yet you have another kind of controller, I guess, that flies the
yeah,
drone, right? It's a separate
yep,
device. So.
yeah,
And then the business with the second screen, I tried to do that one time a while ago with an iPad, and I had difficulty. But I think, if I'm correct on this, Apple software has enhanced the ability now to you can actually drag windows across, right, from your
yes, yep, yep,
talk a little about that. What, but
yeah. So
you're
you,
using main control of your computer, right? And then the
yes. So you can, Apple has a way, there's two ways you can do it. You can actually use the mouse and what you're using on your computer to control the iPad apps. I don't typically use that because that's just not the way I tend to work. Or you can have it actually literally become part of an extension of your computer. So you can drag whatever window you want over there, and have it sit there. You can interact with it with the mouse. I think you can even touch it. I don't typically think to go do that just because I'm in computer mode, not tablet mode, but I'm pretty sure you can actually just reach over and touch it, and your Mac starts to behave like a touchscreen. So you can put anything there. I might put my calendar there if I'm trying to schedule somebody with something and I want to see it, but want to have other things up on the screen in front of me. Those would be pretty standard uses.
Well, it might be pretty standard to you, but I have to say, for me and for some of my listeners, that would be a pretty advanced use of an iPad, but still a really nice thing to know. If you ever feel like your computer screen is not big enough, and this would have to be an Apple device, but if you had an
Yes.
Apple computer and you also wanted to get more screen space, an iPad could be used for that. So I think that's pretty
I,
advanced and an amazing good use of a device like this. So,
I'm pretty sure that I've seen it used in like a Panera or something, where there some people sitting there having a meeting, and they can have. I could be sitting there with my laptop, and I can flip the iPad around and have a presentation running that we can both see, even though we're sitting on opposite sides of the table. So you don't need two computers. You don't need a meeting space. You can actually just flip the iPad around, face the iPad to whoever you're talking with, and say, here's what I'm looking at. You can see the same thing, and then talk through whatever it is that you're dealing with.
oh, so that's a new one on me. That's sort of a mirror mode, or mirroring the screen, if you
Yes.
will. So you have two images of the same on there. That's one more to put on the list. I think the list for iPad use is growing even as we go on with this interview. So good. Now, a different category of things that you have done with it, I think, is you also use it for some fun, right? So you have fun with
Yeah.
your iPad as well. Talk about some of those things.
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, I have two kids. They love to color. They're still of the age where they are all into arts and crafts and all those things. And so they'll regularly be like, "Hey, can you print me out a coloring page?" Sure, no problem. We'll print something out, and then they'll color it. And I'm not going to ever do anything with the picture that I color after I've colored it. They like to hang theirs up, but I don't need to hang my picture up on the fridge. So I'll just color on my iPad. I have the pencil. I can download a picture from the internet and bring it into. There are a bunch of drawing and illustrating apps which I barely scratch the surface of. I have not very little artistic ability. But you can color, you can get any color you want. You can make it look like you're using colored pencils or crayons or markers, and also being colorblind. I can tell when something is green and when something is brown, which if I'm coloring with pencils or whatever, I may not know if I'm picking the right
Oh,
color or not.
interesting.
So
Yeah,
that's
on
helpful
that
for
front,
me.
I was in a coffee shop a few months ago, and I saw the one of the owners or managers of the shop sitting off to the side with an iPad, while the place was running in business, and they were sort of doodling up
Hmm.
the circular or the advertisement or whatever they were going to
Hmm.
put up for
Yep.
the customers to see of what the menu was, or I don't remember what the drawing was, but it was in an
Yeah.
artsy form, and I've seen some people doing some pretty fantastic. This is not a kids
Yeah.
only kind of tool for
Yes.
art.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there's the tools are very powerful. I don't fully take advantage of them because I don't have that kind of artistic ability. But you can do some really cool things with the apps that are out there and the pencil to make it look like you're drawing on paper, and then it's easier to distribute. You can email it to people, you can text it to people. If you wanted to do some kind of a digital thing, you could put it on a website to sell it or any of those kinds of things.
I know you're not prepared for this, but you mentioned this pencil. Do you have it that you could show it in the view for those that are watching
Yep.
on the
So this
YouTube
this is
channel?
the pencil.
So yeah,
I'm not going to be able to get the iPad twisted around so you can see it, but
that's all
it
right.
looks just like a pencil. Um, the only thing that I don't love about it is unlike a regular pencil, you can't flip it over to erase.
Mm.
It takes a little getting used to. It works a little differently. You tap on it instead of flipping it upside down. I wish I could flip it upside down and erase. But yeah, it looks like a regular pencil.
Yeah, yeah. And for those that have never used one of those, that is a battery controlled item, but Apple has designed, as they usually do, a clever mechanism with a
Yeah,
magnet that holds that pencil to the side of the iPad in a really nice
yeah,
way. So that's really
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it's very convenient. It's easy to charge. It's always there with me, so I can use it whenever I need it.
Okay, any other fun things you do that are worth mentioning?
Yeah. So I may not have any drawing artistic ability, but I do know how to play the guitar, and I will use it pretty regularly. It's my go-to spot for all of my guitar music. I used to have a binder with everything printed out, and I would try to keep it organized, and it would never stay organized. Um, and I found that it's so much easier to keep it on my iPad. I have the songs that I play regularly. I have them saved so that I can just go open them up, and all the chords are there, the words are there, so I can play and sing. And then there's an app that our church uses. So when I'm playing on a Sunday morning, they say, "Hey, here are the songs," and all of the music just shows up there. All I have to do is open it up,
Mm.
and I can start playing the songs for this week. Yeah, it's really convenient to not have to. I don't have to go hunt and look for them. The chords will be the same. Everybody's looking at the same thing, and it just makes it really easy. And then I could be sitting there, and my wife will say, "Oh, I heard this new song. Any chance you could learn how to play it?" And I can just go look it up and be, "Guess I can play that," or "No, honey, this one's not going to happen," which happens sometimes because I'm good, but I'm not that good. So
Fascinating, fascinating. Boggles my mind how many different things that can be done on this kind of a device.
yeah, yeah.
Anything else that you?
Yeah, we I love using it for games. I'm not like a heavy duty gamer, computer gamer or anything, but I found over the years a couple of games that I enjoy playing. They kind of come in and out in my free time. Sometimes in the morning, I'll have a few minutes before the kids get up, or in the afternoon or in the evening, I'll grab it and play something for a little bit. But there's a whole bunch of them. Some of them you can play with another person sitting right next to you or across the country. You can be playing a game with friends or family, which is just great to be able to have a way to connect.
Just amazing. If this hasn't expanded somebody's view of how an iPad could be used, I'm not sure what can. You've shown me
Yeah,
so many examples of things, and this is just scratching the surface, like you say.
yeah,
There's an app for that. Is what there used to be a commercial on
yes.
that said that a
Hmm.
lot, and you can. It's only limited by the apps that are out there and what your interest is, and you can just take it to a whole nother level. But with all these
Yeah.
things you can do on it, let's try to answer that big question that I started out with in the interview. If you can do all these things in an iPad, then can an iPad, in your opinion, replace a computer, let's say a laptop? And why or why not?
Sure. It's a hard question to answer. It's a question that we've been dealing with in our own family. My wife's laptop is very old, and we've been talking about replacing it. We've talked about. She said, "Oh, I really want an iPad," and I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be happy with that." I know how she uses it. For the most part, it would be fine. There's a couple of things she likes to make Shutterfly books, and Shutterfly doesn't quite play nice with the iPad for some reason. Um, so maybe someday it will, but at the moment it doesn't. Um, and we started looking into it. And by the time you get an iPad, and if it's going to be her computer, I was like, well, you're going to need a keyboard. By the time you get an iPad and a keyboard, you're almost to the point where you're paying the same price. And that was where I got stuck. I was like, if we were saving a bunch and it wasn't going to cost as much, I'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Well, we're going to spend just as much on an iPad and a keyboard with the case and all the stuff that you're spending just as much as a computer. So you could really go either way. I think for me, it's my personal computer, what I use for my personal stuff. Um, the only exception might be I enjoy photography. So taking pictures and editing them is usually a little easier on a computer than an iPad. I could do it on my iPad, but it's just not. I don't know. I'm so used to doing it on the computer because I've been doing it there longer that that's my normal. Um, so it depends on what you're going to use it for. If you're going to be doing intense video editing or typing up really long documents, an iPad might not be the right answer. But if you're mostly quick emails, little Word documents, grocery list, that kind of thing, it might be the right call instead of a computer. It's definitely more portable because you can take it with you a little bit more easily than a computer.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think that's really key, is it depends on the person and what they're going
Yeah,
to do with it. There's no one answer for that question in my mind. I know at one point I was trying to travel without bringing my computer with me, and it it was more convenient to not have the computer because I didn't have the extra weight in my backpack
yeah,
and that. But there were some times when, well, you wish you had your computer with you. You might want to
yeah,
type something that's longer, or like you said, the
yeah,
keyboard tends to come in handy. On the other hand, the iPad has some nice features. I could see why Krista's interested in that because she would want to
yeah,
uh, learn to do some of the drawing things and things that you just can't do on a computer. So there's
yeah,
pluses and minuses, but yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's really a toss up, and it really depends on the individual. I think they've pushed it to this
yeah.
point where it's good. All right. What about if you were a newbie? Like I like to wrap up my question thinking about people who have never ever tried what is being talked about on the show. In this case, never had an iPad and wanted to consider getting one. What are some tips that you might uh, give them to consider how to get started in trying it out if they wanted to take the plunge and give it a try?
Yeah, so I think the way to start would be to think, I'm going to make the assumption that you are using or have used a smartphone at some point, but take the things that you do on your phone and say which of those things, kind of, you alluded to this earlier, which of these things would be better or easier to do if I had a bigger screen, because that's essentially what you're getting. So it might be, um, I like to watch YouTube videos in the evening, just sitting on the couch. Um, you can do it on your phone. It'll play. You'll be able to see everything, but it'd be easier to see if it was on an iPad. That's typically where I watch Tech Tip for Seniors is on my iPad.
Mm.
Um, so, it may just be those kinds of things. You may say, hey, I'm interested in the artistic side. So, hey, I'm interested in the pencil. I'd be interested in checking out some of the apps that would let me draw. Or I'm trying to think if there's, I think those are probably the two things that stand out to me most. Things that would be easier to do. And if you're looking for something that will allow you to do something specific, the one that jumps to mind most to me would be the creative side.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning to add to what you just said that it's not a phone. It doesn't have the phone
Yeah,
capabilities that you get with a smartphone, but it does have a camera. And so I've
yeah,
seen people, and I've traveled, and this is for vacation or otherwise, and I've seen people use the iPad as their camera when they're taking pictures of
yeah,
scenery and so forth. They'll hold up this big box and they can
yeah,
see this is not that obvious, but you can see what you're going to take the picture of a lot nicer on a big screen if you have the right lighting. It's not always great in outdoor lighting, but if you're
yeah,
taking picture of something and you want to have a good big view of it, that's one thing you can do, even though you can't talk on it. Now, it does have the ability to do FaceTime, which is what,
yep,
uh, and there's another example of where a bigger screen could help you because you can see, the other person you're
yeah.
talking to a little bit larger. So there's some
If
pluses on
you're
that side.
Yeah, if you're doing like a family or a group of people that are calling in from a bunch of places, I'm pretty sure on your phone you get whoever's talking, and that's the only person you can see. On the iPad, I'm pretty sure it spreads them out, and you can see pictures of everybody all at the same time, which is nice to not be have the screen jumping back and forth between all the different family members that are talking all when you're all in a group conversation and it's bouncing back and forth all over the place. It's easier to see everybody all at the same time.
Very good. Yeah, that's true. And we do have a large family. So yeah, that is another really good example of where we can get a lot of benefit from it. I'd say if a person was interested in trying it, another thing to consider is getting in with the mini because it's a lot less expensive. It doesn't give you the
Yeah,
big footprint of a big iPad,
yeah,
but it does have a lot of benefits of being a larger screen, and it's exactly the same operating system, so it will do all the same
yeah.
things that you would want to do on the bigger
Hmm.
ones, but just a smaller
Yep.
version. And it packs a little lighter too. So if you are taking it with you
Yeah.
in places, a mini is a nice way to consider. So,
Yeah.
well,
My mom, her go-to iPad is a mini. She likes that
oh,
it's tiny and small. So that's, for her, that she started there, and that's when she needs a new one, that's what she always goes for. Is she loves the mini because it's small. I like the bigger ones because I like having the bigger screen. I don't mind that it's a little bit heavier. So it is kind of one of those you weigh what you're going to use it for.
yeah. Oh, and that brings another point. Since you mentioned your mom, I know some folks are readers on the show. They might be interested in doing a book on their phone, and it's another great way. Just take advantage of it. Similar to a Kindle, but you don't have to
Yeah,
have a separate Kindle. You can just get the Kindle app on your
yeah,
iPad, and it does the same exact ability to read page by page of a
yeah,
book. So just so many things to use as examples of good uses for an iPad
yeah.
if you do take the plunge.
We used my iPad recently on a family trip. We were traveling, what was it, 8 hours or so to Ohio. We didn't want to bring a bunch of books with us for our kids, but they like to read books every night before they go to bed. And I realized while we were there, I said, we've got our library has digital books, so I downloaded picture books to my iPad through our library. And every night we would open one up and read it on the iPad. And rather than, carrying a bunch of books that we were going to have to move around and worry about making sure we brought them home, I had it all right there. It was all there, and the kids loved it.
Lighten your load. Yeah,
Yes.
that's so I think if a person does decide to take the plunge into an iPad, they'll just find more and more uses
Yeah.
that they could take advantage of if it's there and you have it already. Once you make the investment, you would find that there are many different choices for things to do on it.
Yeah.
Andy, this has been a very, very helpful conversation. I think we covered so many topics, and probably we could probably go and do another whole show on more uses for the iPad. But this was, I think,
Yeah.
good enough to get our feet wet. I want to thank you for being on the show, and I really enjoyed our discussion. And also want to thank the listeners for joining us. Be sure to check out our show notes for further information and helpful links that we might be able to provide for you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a note in the comments section, or you can write me at techtipsforseniorspodcast@gmail.com. Andy, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for
Really
having me.
appreciate it. Really appreciated you coming. Well, thanks for joining me today on Tech Tips for Seniors. I hope you found today's tech tip helpful. If so, let me know by leaving a note in the comments section for this episode. And it would be awesome if you would also like, subscribe, and pass this on to a friend who can get something out of it. It would also be helpful if you left a review. So if you've already done that, thank you so much. Remember, stay tuned for the next episode of Tech Tips for Seniors. Take care.